Yep.
Okay, this is the October 16th, 2023 meeting of the Palm Springs Architectural Review Committee. And we are coming to the beginning of the meeting at 5:34. May we have Mr. Newell, please take roll.
I'll be taking the roll. Member Thompson,
Here.
Member Walsh,
Here.
Member McCoy,
Here.
Member Dosey,
Here.
Chair Jakeway.
Here,
You have a quorum.
thank you. Could we have a staff report, please, on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda was available for public access at the City Hall bulletin board on the west side of the council chamber on Thursday, October 12th, and posted on the city's website.
Thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by John Walsh,
Second.
second by Tom Dosey. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is not that is within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If anybody would like to speak on an item that is not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Please let us know if you are here. Okay, seeing none, let's move ahead to our agenda. The consent calendar is item number 1. The minutes of the meeting of September 18th, 2023. Does anybody have any changes to those minutes?
Did you receive the minutes for that agenda? Because I was told by Vanessa those might not have been in the packet.
They were not there.
Yeah, so on the meetings, we will continue those until the next meeting where they'll be available.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
So now we'll go to new business. Item 2A, 12 at Las Palmas LLC for a major architectural application to construct a 12-unit multifamily residential development consisting of 4 sale condominiums on a 0.95 acre site located at 1424 Camino Norte. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair and committee members. The matter before you this evening is a major architectural application for a 12-unit residential condominium project located along North Palm Canyon between Stevens and Vereda Norte. Vereda Norte. This is an aerial view of the project site in relation to its surroundings. It is located at the on the westerly side of the intersection of Camino Monte Vista and North Palm Canyon. This item was, in conjunction with this item, the applicant did file a conditional use permit, major architectural application, tentative tract map. And those applications were reviewed by the Planning Commission on December 14th of 2022. The commission conditionally approved the project subject to conditions. One of the conditions was that the vehicular gates be removed from the project plans. The applicant appealed that condition to the city council, who ultimately considered that item and voted to uphold the commission's decision to remove those gates. So essentially, the Planning Commission approved the project, and the references that I'll have here in my presentation this evening are relative to that approval, because that's essentially the site plan and elevations that were previously reviewed and decided on by the Planning Commission. Again, this is the site view, or the aerial view of the site in relation to its surroundings. There is an existing 2-story office building to the south. The Aloe Palm Canyon affordable housing project is located on the vacant site to the north at the corner of Stevens and Palm Canyon. And then there's the Skylark Hotel to the east. as well as multi-tenant building on the south side of that street, and then single-family residential to the west. So the site plan that you see here on the right is the proposed plan after Planning Commission had reviewed it. The top left is the Planning Commission approved plan. You can see they are essentially establishing the same plan here before you with the 8 units along Palm Canyon and the accessory living spaces adjacent to the street. These units are single story. These are 3-story units here. And then there are garage spaces behind those with the internal driveway taking access off of Camino Norte. There are 4 units on the back side of this property. These are 2-story units here in compliance with the R2 zoning requirements. And these units have 2-car garages, whereas the other units along Palm Canyon, with the exception of the 2 on the interior, have 1 unit or 1-car garages with a detached separate car garage behind it. Moving on to project perspectives to give you a sense of how the project looks from a bird's eye view. Here on the left is the if you're standing from the northeast elevated above the project site, a bird's eye view from Palm Canyon looking to the southwest. So you see the single-story units along the street, or accessory living spaces along the street, with the 3-story behind. And on that 3rd story, it's a partial interior spaces with an outdoor deck behind that 3rd story bedroom. And these are the 2-story units closer towards Camino Norte. On the right, this is another view if you were looking from the southwest of the site to the northeast. Looking from closer to Camino Norte. And then this is another view if you were looking from the northwest to the southeast, showing the Aloe Palm Canyon project in the foreground, at the 2-story commercial office building in the background, and the project site in the center. Here you have renderings of what the Planning Commission reviewed on the top of the slide versus what is being proposed for the final elevation or project renderings on the bottom of the slide. As you can see here, the single-story accessory living spaces along Palm Canyon had folding plate roofs, and there was some different composition on the 3-story pieces behind that. That was originally reviewed by the Planning Commission. And the revised design that's before you this evening for approval, they've simplified that and created a flat roof with some wing walls that wrap down to the ground here. And they've removed the single or individual staircases to the accessory living spaces along that sidewalk, and put a central staircases accessing with the sidewalk accessing each of the units here, as well as the central access to the interior of the project between the buildings. That remains the same. This is another rendering from Palm Canyon, a little bit further north of the project site, looking to the southwest. Again, the Planning Commission reviewed and approved rendering is shown here at the top. And on the bottom is the final design with the flat roof of the accessory living spaces. These were some of the details that the Planning Commission looked at, and I'll get into some of the Planning Commission conditions a little bit later in the presentation, but essentially this is what the Planning Commission reviewed and approved in terms of the elevation along Palm Canyon and the massing of the proposed project, with the single-story massing in the foreground and the 3-story massing in the background. And then the applicant described the residential project here on the bottom left from Park Imperial South as kind of the inspiration for what was proposed on the single-story units. Again, this is the revised final elevation that is proposed before you this evening. It is again a flat roof. And the details of these accessory living spaces, the single-story living spaces is now a stucco as opposed to the block design that was presented through the Planning Commission. There was also some discussion about the landscaping along Palm Canyon, and I'll have some more information on that later. Moving to Camino Norte, the rendering here on the top is what the Planning Commission reviewed. If you're standing on the street frontage, this rendering doesn't show the Aloe Palm Canyon project, which would expected, it's expected to be somewhere in this area here. And then the final design, you can see most of the changes are kind of relative to some of the balcony designs up here on the 3-story pieces. And then the end unit along Camino Norte has been revised to have a projecting eave as opposed to the simplified massing on that street. This is the north elevation reviewed on the top of the screen by the Planning Commission. Or excuse me, the Camino Norte elevation, which would be the west elevation for the project. And then what is before you in the elevation on the bottom is the final rendering, or excuse me, the final elevation for the project. On the top of the screen, the north elevation of the project is here from Planning Commission's review. Again, you see some of the decorative block design on the single-story unit that's been removed, and it's now a simplified design here with the stucco, the white stucco that's proposed. And again, some additional design refinements were made on these 2-story pieces for the units fronting Camino Norte. South elevation on the top of the screen is what the Planning Commission reviewed for the project. On the bottom is the final design. And these are site sections, just giving you some reference from a cut through of the site from Palm Canyon here on the left, going to Camino Norte on the right. The single-story, 3-story piece with the outdoor roof deck, and the 2-story elements of the units towards Camino Norte. So the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, approved this back on December 14th, 2022. They had some questions about some of the details and the landscaping, and they directed that the ARC take a look at a couple of items. One being that they wanted more specific details on the block design because the commission didn't feel there was enough information. As I've mentioned tonight, the applicant has changed that and removed that design from the project, and they are proposing a stucco, dark gray stucco, along that Palm Canyon frontage. And then the second item was regarding the landscape plan and the tree selection and the planters along Palm Canyon. The applicant had showed some olive trees along that planter fronting Palm Canyon in the initial designs, and the commission had some concerns with that given the limited vertical space between the single-story accessory living spaces and the sidewalk. So in response, the applicant has now simplified that and removed those trees and is proposing I believe it is the Regal Mist along that planter area. So because of the extended overhang that extends over this area here, as you see here in this original plan, they had 4 trees. These were olive trees in concept. And because of that limited vertical space, they have removed those trees. Staff has reviewed the final design details against the criteria necessary for approval and the architectural review criteria of section 94.04.00 of the zoning code. And has made findings in support of the project. Thus, staff has prepared a draft resolution for your consideration approving this application, subject to many of the conditions that were previously included for the Planning Commission. And so those are all attached to your report. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or pull up any specifics on the plans and review those with the committee. The applicant is also here if you have questions for the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Does anybody on the committee have questions of staff?
I have a question.
Yes, Tom.
David, in your presentation of slides, the top version was Planning Commission approved, but at the bottom it said final design. Was the final design based on comments from the Planning Commission, or just because when I read the Planning Commission approved, I assume that's the approved elevations, but yet there was a final design. So was that something as the response to the Planning Commission's comments or the developers' changes in submittal?
They were in response to the developers' changes in submittal. So like when I mentioned the block design detail, the commission didn't want necessarily want those to be removed. But the concern was there was the image that you saw from Park Imperial South. There was a design detail that showed a CMU block, and it wasn't entirely clear which was being proposed. So that's why the commission asked the ARC to look at those details. Ultimately, in the end, the applicant chose to revise the elevation and remove that element. So ultimately, the purview lies with the ARC as to the final design details of the elevations. But I think because there was some question about what that block detail was, that's why they asked the committee to look at that further.
But even in some of the elevations, the window proportions and the building massing and the dimensional aspects, building elevations look like they changed. And was that based on request from the Planning Commission or the developer's own volition to make those changes?
Not request from the Planning Commission. It was the developer making changes since the Planning Commission review.
Okay.
But in terms of the height, the building location, the items that the Planning Commission purview has, that those items are essentially the same. They haven't changed much from what was presented to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
So, David, ignoring the block issue along Palm Canyon, the elevations are quite different. So if we were to select the new elevations, does the project have to go back to the Planning Commission?
No, because the final design details are of the ARC's purview.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff from the committee? Okay, thank you. At this point, we would like the applicant to give us a presentation. Please give us your name, and you have 10 minutes to present the project.
Hi, my name is Dennis Cunningham. I have Palm Springs Modern Construction in Palm Springs. And at this point, I'd like to defer to Lance O'Donnell, the architect on the project, and I could add to it if you want, but I think Lance should take it from here.
Thank you, Dennis. Hey, good evening. And David, thank you for that presentation. As a committee here, you guys have an interesting task to, at some level, compare and contrast what we were thinking about last year and then this current presentation that's before you today. A lot has transpired over the last year, and the project next door, to the north, we did start to see more detailed renderings. We understood the location of that project, and that project has a lot going on architecturally. We like it. We think it's going to be a really nice addition to the North Palm Canyon streetscape. So what we undertook was a quieting down of what we were doing. Along the front with the folded plate, there was quite a lot going on. So we wanted to simplify and turn the project into more of a loft appearance rather than something that might be more referential to a contemporary project. So the buildings along Palm Canyon, David, if you could pull those up, it's probably easier to compare and contrast with the committee here. Yeah, so without the old project up, which is perfect, what you see is just a simplification. The windows that are facing to the east and onto Palm Canyon are simplified. The massing is simplified and quieted down. What you see on the right-hand side there of that image is the project to the north of us. They're approximately 5 feet higher, just starting out at grade. And then they're proceeding up to 30, 35 feet, I believe. Yeah, which kind of hovers up over us. So we wanted to make sure that we had privacy on that side and we had a very, very quiet elevation as we're facing onto their project. Again, I think David was right on when he said that the removal of some of the landscape trees along North Palm Canyon there were done so that we could have more of an overhang and solar control protection for these ADA units along North Palm Canyon. But I think overall the massing was just much simplified. And then what we tried to do was carry that around to the other side so it felt like one cohesive project. As David said, the site planning remained pretty much the same. You will have noticed some of the swimming pools on these front North Palm Canyon units were removed. We started running into a little bit of challenge getting a pool and a living area in there. And, certainly a homeowner could put a hot tub in there or something, but going through the exercise of getting pools in those small spaces became a bit of a challenge. You do see 3 pools that remain in some of the units. So there's quite a variety here of different types of living arrangements that as we look at Palm Springs' trajectory going forward, it makes a lot of sense for density up on this end of town, livable, walkable, more urban type housing. So we have the 88 ADUs, we have the 3-story units with the roof decks, then it proceeds back into 2-story units with the roof deck. And then as we face the residential of Las Palmas area, it's a 2-story unit that is, also trying to have that residential scale as we proceed back to the west. So this is a good view, just the overall composition of the project, 3 stories on the left, east, and then 2 stories with roof decks, and then 2 stories with no roof deck, a pool, and then landscaping along the Las Palmas frontage. Gates have been removed. We think it's a project that fits in well amongst the taller commercial building to the south and this future project going in here to the north. But we're happy to answer any questions. Yeah, I think Dennis wants to add a couple comments.
We took a real close look at it as we were going through the folded plate look, a takeoff of what Burgess did up south. And and we were getting into the homage part and the Palm Springs folded plate. And I just really started taking a look at I consider in some respects an overuse, and maybe the homage is not there. It's just that that's somewhat of an overuse of folded plate in a new fashion or new way or new project. And then we started taking a really close look at the development next door. It's an extremely, I think you agree, it's an extremely dynamic project. I think they've really done a great job on it on the corner of Stevens and Palm Canyon. I felt that we have 180 feet of frontage, like 200 blocks. And I was overemphasizing with those folded plate roofs, and I felt I was getting in a competitive way visually with the guys next door. That would be a losing proposition for us. We're 180 feet of frontage, and that is really dynamic architecture. They own the corner, and rightfully so, and I'm glad they do because I really think it's good. So what we looked at doing, and plus, there's a 5-foot retaining wall between us and them, and a 6-foot high wall, 11-foot high wall on the north side. So we wanted to quiet it down, and that's why we put the units the way we did. And also, I didn't want to put sliding glass doors and balconies on the units on Canyon, because what ends up happening is you end up with, in my opinion, you end up with people doing their own thing. One guy may have a neon lava lamp program, another guy's got this, another guy hangs it. And I really, or some guys do a great job on. Some people do, I'm sure. But I just felt that doing that would just be, just too much. And I didn't want to take anything away from the project next door. And so that's why I really took a close look at that homage to Bertha's project. And I went, I think they did a good job on their own. Let's quiet it down. That's when Lance and I got together, and Lance took a real close look at it. The lids on those guest houses are 1x6 wood going over and down, so it's really quiet. And then just I want to comment on the landscaping on the front. There were trees. It's about a 20 to 25 foot behind that low retaining wall that's there, and you start dunking it up with trees and this and that. So we thought just a real low landscape program in there, like Desert Spoon or something, just looking good. And also the Lance said, let's not pop in every single guest house to Palm Canyon. Let's collect them and bring them down quietly. And those units, each unit is either set forward or set back 6 inches or so. And the heights are higher in the 4 in the middle, because we wanted to have a big slab commercial front on it. We wanted to have more of an individual look in a simple way with some shadow line. And that's pretty much it for the Palm Canyon side. Going to the side that we were talking about, which is on Norte, that one the views are just absolutely incredible from there, because everything in Las Palmas is 1 story. This is 2-story and then 3-story with the decks in the back. And I mean, the views, as you know, are just absolutely fabulous. That house on the corner is not looming over the guy across the street, not looking down in their private property. And they take advantage of the views. And we really wanted to give a single family detached neighborhood connective look on our house on up there. And that's pretty much, we took the gates out. They didn't want the gates, and we put the like that's on the front, which matches the neighborhood really well. And that's what we did. And they do have roof decks, and the roof decks are going to be important because of the views. And no roof deck they don't look at each other. Each one has its own separate ability. So anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, but that's why I was teenagers.
Thank you. Dennis, you were breaking in and out a little bit, so if we didn't hear everything you said, we asked you a question you already told us about, please excuse us.
Well, most of you guys know, I have a philosophy of why use 3 words when 90 will do. So maybe saying a word wouldn't so bad. So anyway.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is the point for public comments. Is there anybody from the public who would like to make comments on this particular project? David, do you know if there's anybody in the waiting room?
No one requested to speak. Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
then we'll go to questions from the committee for the applicant. Who in the committee has some questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yeah, Dan.
Hey Lance, how are you?
Thank you.
Did you consider at any point on the front side of Palm Canyon, rather than just doing a plain stucco, maybe not doing the block, but adding some kind of detail to the building? It's a lot of stucco that's just going to be painted if there's maybe a rock applique or something like that.
What we looked at was making sure we had good solar control, making sure that it was simplified, as Dennis mentioned, and then we have the two-tone paint color. Yeah, and then we do have access gates that are going to be a custom steel gate that rolls in front of the wall. So there's some little steel detailing in there as well. But no, we didn't consider going back to block, nor did we look at stone.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
I have a kind of a comment and a question. I've lived in some units. I lived at Seoul and we had a third floor sun deck. And in the 5 years I was there, we went up to that third floor twice. And I think sun decks are kind of overrated. They're kind of romanticized. I think they work in this plan for the building along Palm Canyon, but for the 3-unit building where the only thing on the third floor is the stairwell, I think the architecture of that looks really out of proportion and really odd. So I would ask you to consider eliminating the sun decks from those 3 units on that building. So it is totally just a 2-story building. Then let the building on Palm Canyon step up to 3 floors. Not a requirement, but just a suggestion. And in the courtyards of the smaller units where you've eliminated the pools, are you going to install hardscape solid, or will those be left so that the homeowner can landscape them if they prefer?
We're gonna landscape them out, and so they'll be more like a patio, a comfortable patio between the guest house as such and the main house. And in answering your question, their thought on units 2, 3, and 4, those are also offset of each other, and the roof decks are very important for us because there really isn't much yard. And the roof decks that we're talking about, want to do, is they have a stairwell going up, but also they have the option for an elevator on the side of the stairwell so they can go up. And the decks, we're going to finish them out. They're not going to be like decks of text with you see the flashing around it and you put up a couple of flashing call it a deck. I mean, this is going to be, these are going to be the focal landscape area to be. Also, they don't look at each other a lot. For example, unit 2, the second one in, the deck is in the front, the middle one, the deck is in the, rephrase that. The deck 2 is on the north side of the unit. The deck unit 3 is in the south side, and then unit 4 is back to the front again. So they don't look at each other. And I mean, it's really important. The decks are really important. And the other thing is you can't really stand back. It's not like, we have 5 acres and we're parked in the middle of 5 acres. There's no area to stand back to see the upper area, except for maybe the parking lot and Ingrid Ray's building next door. But there's so many trees in that area, in that setup too, that these are offset enough, I believe, that it really doesn't conflict with it. And then again, what we have is the project to the north. I'm facing up against an 11-foot high wall that I'm ficusing, and I really need to focus on getting people up to the deck. That's why I'm inviting the stairwell that's enclosed as well as an elevator.
One thing I've learned when I meet with my clients is I never show them 2 things and ask them which they like best. And I'm going to do exactly why I do it to them. I love what you did to everything on the project for the elevations, but I like the elevation of the guest houses on the original plan better. So my preference would be to make a hybrid of the 2. But I think your improvements on the the final go around, the massing, the window sizes, I really prefer the second one.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? John Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as, I guess, this is kind of a question, as the elevations went through their evolution, and as we look at the fenestration, one of the things that sort of struck me is both east and west, certainly, just a level of solar protection. It's kind of minimum. And I kind of wonder if something a little more aggressive can't be done, because we all know what a cooker the east and the west can certainly be. The other thing is, as I see where you have landed with the windows on the units facing the east elevation facing Palm Canyon, I'm trying to kind of get a sense of what opens there, you know, and just concerns about privacy and how that, even though it's back from the street, there's a level of exposure to it. Anyway, I just some rethinking in terms of the windows would be helpful, I think.
Can you
Thank
pull
you,
up that
John.
elevation? Yeah, so John, the what I'm calling the loft buildings with the two windows that are paired with the darker band between them. So those are set back in 2 feet into the facade. So in plan, they read as a closet depth inside the each of those floors.
And forgive me, tell me where does that occur?
Well, I can say
No, if you
every,
look at- yeah, if you look at-
every
Yeah.
sliding, every window and every sliding glass door on units 2 through 12 are set back 2 feet.
I see.
So you see that we have, you know, the 2 vertical fins, and we've got the overhang above. So the whole thing is pushed in 2 feet from the facade. So the should be good shadow, you know, as the sun kind of traverses the sky there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it also pulls us back so that folks aren't hanging out looking into their neighbor's yard
Right.
so much, and their views more just due east, sunrise, the little San Bernardino Mountains. So.
And units, the ones with the guest houses on the roof, the overhang there looking west is about 6 to 8 feet overhang on that guest house on the 3rd floor. The other thing is that we're using the glass panels at the roof level, and I'm holding those back 2 feet so as you're not hanging over the glass panel to
the parking,
you know, at the parking and creating a party effect in there where you're just hanging over it. So they're held back 2 feet as well, those 42-inch high glass panel.
Thank you. I kind of another straggler question here is the grouping of 4 units on the west side. I don't know what you call that cluster. I can see that there is a projection when you get above the 1st floor out from the bedroom area. Is that correct? It just, and what do you end up with a clearance from that bay projection to the wall of the neighbor?
Are you talking the splitter walls between the units of 5 through 12, which are the ones on Palm Canyon? I'm holding those up, and I'm holding them up so they look at each other, and also bringing that wing out, I guess call it. I don't know the term, but even bringing it out and bringing it down to the ground on the drive area next to the garage.
John, were you referring to here in this view, the lower left-hand side? That area there?
Yes. Do you have it from the flip side? Because that's, All right.
So the lower image you see, we have kind of a Romeo and Juliet balcony there.
Yes.
Yeah, with 2 foot depth, and then we have the sliders. So one could open that up and stand out there.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, any other committee questions for the applicant?
I have a question, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
Tom,
Lance, on the elevations, it shows the planter along Palm Canyon in a different color. Is that what material is that planter proposed to be, and what would the final height of that wall be above the sidewalk?
So Tom, it'll likely be CMU. And I don't know if yeah. Well, Dennis is saying the planter wall that's existing, but
Yeah, well, there's an existing wall along Palm Canyon that is CMU stack bond 4-inch high block. And that's gonna either remain, or I'm gonna have to take it out and put it back in place, because I don't know if it's structurally sound or not, but that look would remain the same.
so it'll be CMU, likely painted.
Here's my 80 words to your 3-word
Yes.
answer.
I think in the elevation, you show it, it looks like it could be interpreted as like some type of a steel planter or a, but
No,
I
it's
like the
it's a block wall.
Is it? Yeah.
It's just a clean
And
CMU,
I think-
low maintenance wall.
And it looks like that existing one, I'm sure, will have to be removed under the grading operation. But again, I think that's an opportunity maybe to do something a little bit more decorative, or even if it's a stacked block or something that as a design element.
Rather than plastering over it. That's a yeah, it's a good suggestion.
and while we're looking at this elevation, a couple of questions. I never quite understood what you're proposing. There's a dark gray and then an element that's a lot of vertical lines, and then the light gray above. And if you go all the way to the left, it looks like boards. Can you explain what's going on in there?
Yeah, if we were in the I don't know, walking on the sidewalk looking at the building, we would see the wood element that comes down these vertical walls wrapping over the ceiling. So the wood wraps up these wing walls and then up and over the ceiling and back down. And then back behind that is white plaster with these clear story windows operable. Below that is the gray stucco, and you see the dividing screens. The vertical lines that appear close together, that is the barn door access into the courts. So those push sideways, and there's a steel detail. There's a horizontal detail running across there that these gates roll on that steel detail, and that's just, it's accentuated all the way across. So that's what's demarcating the various colors and heights there.
That's nice to understand that much better, because I didn't see a location of the gate shown on the plans. It makes a lot of sense now as you walked us through this. And I think the wood treatment wrapping over the ceiling is a very nice, it's starting to give more character to this elevation than I thought that it had. So you've gained a lot of, in my opinion, a lot more positive impact to the street here.
Well, thanks for asking the question.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Okay, Lance and Dennis, thank you very much. As a committee, we're going to discuss our thoughts. Committee members.
I'll go first.
Tom, you're muted. Let's go with Dan
Dan,
first.
yeah.
I'm sorry, let's go with Dan Thompson.
I think it's a nice looking building. I like the improvements that they made. The folded plate I was actually really attracted to until Lance kind of explained more detail of what's going on in the revised plan. I like that the wood from the street view, you'll see that. I think it adds some detail that I was missing when I was looking at the drawings. I think that the planter wall would be really cool if it was steel plates instead to give it a little kind of an edge to it. But overall, I think it's a nice looking building. It's an improvement over the first draft, I think.
Thank you, Dan. Tom Dosey?
My only comments were, and maybe it's a question, but would the existing Washingtonia robustas that are in the sidewalk along Palm Canyon be replaced to be consistent with the Washingtonia foliifera palms that are to the south and part of the Palm Canyon street theme? And then while I like the grasses and the simplicity, of that design element and the planters, I would ask the applicant to maybe look at they can still keep that continuity and consistency, but maybe introduce a couple other plants in whatever setting that they would like. Because the grasses for a while, those muhlenbergias are beautiful when they're in bloom, but then they do have a downtime to them. And I'm not sure so many of them along Palm Canyon frontage would look great. Dennis has done some other projects with the desert spoon and varieties that looked great. And then I guess, yeah, my only other comment was on the wall material, which I think Dan addressed. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? John Walsh?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just, I'm looking at the long south elevation and, just in general, that it tends to be a problematic issue, a long blind wall condition of some sort. And it just sort of begs for some level of care and articulation. It's as we sort of evaluate the elevations and what the process has been in terms of consideration of issues, that would be one last thing that I think might need some further attention.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? John McCoy, some comments?
Sure. So I think it's an attractive project. We don't have any information on courtyard landscapes. You mentioned that they were going to provide some of the landscape. We don't have any information on lighting. Is it pole mounted? Is it surface mounted? I would just ask them to be careful to not get to a commercial level of lighting in a residential project next to a very residential neighborhood. I know you've got a commercial project next door, and it's easy to slide past that as lighting engineers lay out the plans. That's it.
Thank you. I struggled with a number of things here that are caused because of the density of the project. It's unfortunate that I think that 12 units got put on a piece of land that should hold 8 to 10 units. But the planning commission has approved that, and density is not an issue that is our say. But I would like to point out a few problems that might need to be dealt with. One is trash pickup. I see that you have your trash bins in every garage, but there's no place to put the trash bins other than in front of your own garage door. So once you pull your trash out, you can't come in and out of your garage. Once the trash is collected, those bins are just sitting scattered along that driveway, especially for units that aren't occupied every day of the week. Also, I think the entry to the units in the smaller building, it looks to me like it's a 5-foot wide hallway with 22-foot high walls on either side and 0 landscaping. So you're walking into a concrete tunnel to get to the front door of those 2 units. Landscaping wise, you're showing a row of landscaping along the north side of the building and the south side of the building that's between your building and the neighboring wall. I don't think anybody will ever see that landscaping. There's no windows looking that way. I think maybe if you had a few bushes at each end of those little dead spaces would kind of seal it off, but that might be some landscaping money that you can save there and spend somewhere else. In general, at first I was really liking the folded plane, but you're right, it could be seeming a little boring or a little, out of touch. And I think the improvements you've made up front there are really nice, especially once you explain, Lance, how all that is being treated. I will say I liked the elevation on the second. Well, I liked all the elevations on the second plan better. I think I'm going to call it the freestanding house is much better from all sides. So I think you've made a lot of nice improvements. Any other comments? And do we have a motion? Well, I will make a motion that we approve the project as submitted, recognizing that the developer and design team are proposing some revisions to the elevations that the planning commission had originally reviewed, but we'd like the improvements to the building, to the window sizes. I think those windows on those bedrooms facing east are so much improved, being kind of a floor to ceiling situation instead of the tall window. So I think it's improved all the way around. So I would like to make a motion that we approve it as submitted. We have a second?
I will second.
Was that Tom Dosey?
No,
It was Dan Thompson, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, committee members, that's the end of our agenda, so that will be the adjournment of tonight's meeting. Any committee member comments just in general on planning issues or our committee issues? I will let you know I had a discussion with David and with Chris this afternoon that we're struggling to recruit some new members for the Architecture Review Committee. We especially need to get licensed architects and a licensed landscape architect. My term has termed out, as have some others. So if anybody can try to recruit some design professionals to join this committee, it would be really appreciated. Staff, any comments for us?
None from me.
Okay, thank you all from the committee, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.